Galactose metabolism involves a set of reactions used by the body to break down galactose. Galactose is a simple sugar primarily found in dairy products, including breast milk and many other foods. Defects in this pathway can result in several diseases, including galactokinase deficiency and galactosemia. In this video, we're going to be exploring the final frontier to learn more about galactose metabolism. Let's get started. Like all of our videos on galactose, this scene similarly takes place in space. Because space is galactic, get it? First, take a look at all of that galactic ice cream in the freezer. Oh man, this spaceship is loaded with galactic sugar. By the looks of all of this galactic ice cream, this mission is expected to last for a very long time. Anyway, this galactic ice cream is Pixarize's symbol for galactose, or galactic sugar. Get it? Galactic sugar for galactose? Should make sense. Let's move on. Now take a look at that ice dispenser below the galactic sugar. You know how all these freezer fridge units also have ice dispensers on the door? I mean, who wouldn't want ice to go with all of their space drinks? But wait, doesn't the ice dispenser look kind of like an owl? Because the buttons on this ice dispenser look kind of like owl eyes, right? Let this owl-like ice dispenser remind you of aldose reductase, a key enzyme involved in galactose metabolism. Get it? An owl for aldose reductase? As a side note, you've seen this aldose reductase symbol before. That's right, in the sorbitol metabolism video. There's probably a relationship here. I encourage you to think about it. Now, what do you need ice in space for? Well, for space drinks, of course. Notice all of that galactic alcohol stashed in the fridge below. No wonder the spaceship's inhabitants equipped their spaceship with an ice dispenser. Even astronauts need to party sometimes, okay? Anyways, this galactic alcohol should help you remember galactitol. You know, since galactitol is an alcohol, that's why they both end in -ol, duh. Anyway, just know that galactitol is produced by aldose reductase from galactose. In normal people, like you and I, very little galactitol is produced, since aldose reductase physiologically operates at very low levels in comparison to the other enzymes we'll mention later. However, when galactose builds up, more of it may be turned into galactitol by aldose reductase. And this buildup of galactitol can cause osmotic damage, leading to clinical findings like cataracts. To learn more about the clinical relevance of galactitol, check out our videos on galactokinase deficiency and galactosemia. Now let's shift gears and discuss the second major pathway involved in galactose metabolism. Take a look outside at our galactic kite over here. If you've already watched our video on galactokinase deficiency, you'll recognize this galactic kite as our symbol for galactokinase. You know, a galactic kite for galactokinase? These galactic kites, or solar sails, are actually used in space to save fuel, but you can just remember them as our symbol for galactokinase. Galactokinase is the enzyme used to convert galactose into our next intermediate, which we'll discuss shortly. But you may be wondering how this solar sail is even operating. You see, solar sails typically capture energy from light particles and use sunlight to float along through space. However, since this is just a prototype, it's actually being powered by this electric outlet here. Alternatively, maybe it's sending its solar energy back to the spaceship? Either way, let this electric outlet remind you of ATP, since ATP is the energy source used by cells, right? ATP is used by galactokinase to power the conversion of galactose into the next intermediate that we'll be discussing shortly. In other words, one molecule of ATP is consumed when galactokinase works. That being said, it's going to be really hard to test you on this, so you can forget this if you want. So what exactly does galactokinase produce? Take a look at the cord plugging in the galactic kite. It looks like one of our recurring characters is tripping over it. Not again, Galactic Fox. If you've ever played Nintendo games in the 90s, you might recognize this Galactic Fox with the gun at his belt. Star Fox? Nah, this is Galactic Fox. By the way, This galactic fox should help you remember galactose 1-phosphate. You know, galactic for galactose and a fox for phosphate or phosphate. And the gun at his hip? Well, that gun is our recurring symbol for the number 1, since gun rhymes with 1. To summarize, this galactic gun fox should help you remember galactose 1-phosphate, the product produced by galactokinase. Remember that kinases work by adding phosphate groups to things. So galactokinase works by adding a phosphate group to galactose, making galactose 1-phosphate. Easy. While galactose can come freely in and out of cells, the addition of a phosphate group effectively traps galactose 1-phosphate inside the cell. This is physiologically important to grab and hold on to the sugar needed for the cell, but this action can also lead to problems and disease. Check out our video on galactosemia for more information. For now, just remember how galactokinase works to convert galactose into galactose 1-phosphate. Next, check out Galactic Fox's underpants hanging there. Before he tripped over the cord, Galactic Fox was actually about to take a very relaxing bubble bath. And come on, who wears underpants in the bath? Even Galactic Fox needs a break every once in a while. But wait, don't these underpants make you think of UDP? That's right, it's the UDP underpants. Our Galactic Fox's pair of underpants should help you remember that a UDP transferase enzyme, or uridyl transferase, converts galactose 1-phosphate into the next intermediate in this pathway. The full name of the enzyme is galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase. As you may also already know, UDP transferases work by transferring UDP groups. This enzyme in particular works by transferring a UDP group from UDP glucose to galactose 1-phosphate. This reaction therefore forms glucose 1-phosphate and UDP galactose in the process. Knowing all of these substrates and products is a bit overkill though. Just focus on the fact that we are using a UDP transferase enzyme here. Next, take a look below at this box of Epsom salt on the ground. It looks like it got knocked over when Galactic Fox tripped on that cord. But seriously, Galactic Fox is pretty fancy, even using Epsom salts for his bath. Anyways, this Epsom salt should also help you remember 4-epimerase, the other enzyme involved in the galactose metabolic pathway. Get it? Epsom salts for epimerase? It's the Epsom salt epimerase. Recall from our previous reaction, the UDP glucose was used to form glucose 1-phosphate. Unfortunately though, this reaction left us with UDP galactose as a byproduct. In order to keep the previous reaction running, we need to regenerate UDP glucose to use as a substrate. Glucose and galactose are just epimers at the 4th carbon, so 4-epimerase can convert UDP galactose back to the UDP glucose we need. Pretty neat, right? As before, don't focus on all the details. Just know that we need an epimerase in order to keep the previous reaction working. So why do these steps matter and how will you get tested? The last 2 enzymes are important clinically, as deficiencies in either one can lead to a clinical condition known as galactosemia. In that condition, everything upstream of these reactions accumulate, so we see an accumulation of galactose, galactose 1-phosphate, as well as galactitol. For the most part, you'll get tested here on deficiencies in the UDP transferase enzyme, but technically, deficiencies in 4-epimerase are also fair game. Check out our video on galactosemia for more information. Finally, take a look at our tray of cookies on top of our bathtub. At least it's a bathtub now. Our Galactic Fox must have woken up from his cryosleep a bit earlier, and he's trying to make the best of his situation. Anyway, the best thing to cap out a relaxing bath is a little bit of sugar. Our Galactic Fox sure has a sweet tooth. At Pixorize, we use sugar or sugary sweets, and these sugary treats should help you remember glucose 1-phosphate, the major product produced by UDP transferase. That's right, we started with galactose and basically just turned it into glucose. And the final glucose 1-phosphate can easily enter into either glycolysis or glycogenesis. Alright, we're done here. Let's do a quick recap to solidify these two pathways in our minds. Galactose metabolism is a series of reactions used by the body to process galactose. There are two major pathways which you should remember for test day. In the first pathway, galactose is converted to galactitol in a reaction catalyzed by aldose reductase. In the second pathway, galactose is first converted into galactose 1-phosphate by the enzyme galactokinase. Next, galactose 1-phosphate is converted to glucose 1-phosphate in a reaction catalyzed by a UDP transferase enzyme. In order to keep this reaction running, 4-epimerase is needed to regenerate certain intermediates. Finally, glucose 1-phosphate can enter into the normal glucose metabolism pathways, such as glycolysis and glycogenesis. Well, that wraps up this video on galactose metabolism in space, the final frontier. Now go back to your cryo chamber and get some rest. I'll wake you when your exam is over.